I'm going to talk about this, how AI could fail you and how to make sure it doesn't. A little bit of background. I am one of the founders of a company called Mode. Mode is a BI tool. This is it. It looks like this. It looks like this. More recently, I, like George Clooney, have untethered myself, I suppose, from Mode. So I'm like an astronaut kind of floating in space to keep with the astronomy theme. And I'm really more like a Matt Damon, just kind of yelling at the internet on a planet by myself, which is all I can say. I'm unemployed. But yeah, this is mostly what I do now. But we're not going to talk about any of this stuff. We're going to talk about 2001, but not this 2001, this 2001, which is the year that .com turned into .bomb. So we all kind of know what this is. This is like the .com era. Everything went bust. Like .bomb. This is the NASDAQ. It was all bad. Things were bad. The question here, though, kind of is like, all right, like .bomb or like .bomb? Like, this is the NASDAQ now. It's doing pretty good. And so you see like the little blip from 2001, but relative to where things are now, it's actually way higher. And so there's like sort of this interesting question here of, was the internet a bubble? Like we all talk about the .com era as a bubble, but like the last chart says like maybe it wasn't a bubble. And so I think an interesting way to talk about this is one of the most famous .com bubble companies, which is Webvan. If you're not familiar with Webvan, it was basically like order groceries on the internet and they would deliver them to you in these trucks. Webvan was like a very, very popular .com company. It's one of the most famous like big collapses. It raised $440 million from VCs at some point in like 2000, 2001. It was at one point worth $10 billion. And then this happened. That happened, where like this is the Webvan stock and it went down to zero and went bankrupt like in, I don't know, 24 months after it got really popular. And so like this obviously was kind of a .bomb sort of thing, but the question here is like, all right, we may not be familiar with Webvan anymore, but a lot of us probably know Instacart. Instacart is basically the same thing. You order groceries online and they get delivered to you. Instacart, last year, filed for an IPO. Today, this is from yesterday, it's worth $10 billion, exactly what Webvan was. And so like the question here is like, how did this work? How come we had one company that didn't work 20 years ago? The exact same idea now seems to work a lot better. Why are there two movies? One does really well, one doesn't. Seems like it's the same movie. These are also actually from the .com era, both from 1998. And so, okay, so like what happened here? Why did this happen? And so I think there's a lot of different stories here. There's a lot of different ways you could talk about the failure of Webvan and the success of Instacart. But one way to tell that story is back in like the 90s when everything looked like this, everybody had web pages. And these were really popular. This was like a new thing. We want to create stuff, put it online. Stores like Apple said, hey, you know what? We're going to create a web page. We're now going to be an online business. And this was like what people were doing 25 years ago. And so the core idea behind Webvan was basically, okay, what if we take a grocery store and we put a website on it? Like it was just a grocery store with a website. And so they said, hey, like, all right, people usually go to the grocery store. Let's like put that on the internet and build all of the grocery store and do everything that you would normally do as a grocery store, but it's going to like, instead of going to the store, you go to the internet. And so that's what they did. They ended up building all of these warehouses. They built like, in effect, a bunch of grocery stores all over the country. They tried to do this the way that you would do a regular grocery store. And that's what didn't work. Like this was really expensive. It was really hard to make this scale. There's a lot of things you couldn't actually do to like sort of build delivery-only grocery stores at that time. And so that's why this happened, was they were trying to build this business where they essentially took the way that we did things in the real world and said, let's just like stick a website around it and it'll magically be successful. And for a minute it was, but eventually this all fell apart. And so the idea basically of like taking something and just putting a website on it doesn't really work. In 2012, when Instacart came out and like the aesthetic was more like this, Instacart did it very differently. And so like Instacart had people go out to existing grocery stores. They shopped at existing grocery stores. They had these employees that were these kind of like, I don't know what the Instacart folks are called, like the Dasher types folks. They did things on their phone. Like they were using a lot of existing infrastructure and a lot of technology that had gotten developed over the last 15 or 20 years that Webvan didn't have access to. They weren't just saying, hey, like, let's stick a website on this. They were saying, actually, there's a really good idea here, but it takes a lot of different technology to make it work. And then specifically, it takes a phone. Like the real big innovation here was we can do this with phones where people can go to stores, they can get orders mobily. We don't have to have like warehouses to do this. We can have people do this kind of in real time as orders come in. And so they basically said, again, put a website on it, doesn't work. There's other ways to be able to solve these problems. And the same problems as what Webvan was solving, but with a lot of different technology than they had before, and a lot of like sort of more novel approaches than just sort of sticking the new technology on existing ways of thinking about problems. And so a lot of the really successful like tech companies that are now the things that we think about with like the big sort of internet boom are companies that are kind of inspired by old ideas, but actually approach them very differently. Like Netflix isn't Blockbuster on the internet, even though it sort of started there. It became streaming, which wasn't even a concept then. Similar with Uber and Airbnb, they're like inspired by hotels and taxis, but the way they're approaching it are very different in a way where they're not saying we're going to be the world's biggest taxi company. They're going to say we're going to solve the same problem as a taxi, but do it in a pretty different way. And so that's really why this happened, was yes, the internet was a really popular thing. The internet really worked, but it didn't work just as like, let's live life the same way we did before with the internet. We had to reinvent a lot of things to actually make it as valuable as it is today. So the question then I guess is like, what does all of this have to do with 2024? Why are we talking about this? The answer kind of obviously is like way back then people wrote stuff like this about the strange new world of the internet. Now we say the same thing about AI. We all know basically the story that has happened over the last couple years. Things like ChatGPT came out. It was the fastest growing website ever. Bill Gates said this is going to be the most important thing in decades. Bill Gates was proved right because now Apple's the most valuable company in the world. NVIDIA is like gone straight up. And so everybody basically has reacted to these last couple years by saying, hey, like, what if we took our products and we put a chatbot on it? And so like the same way that we did this stuff with websites, we've now done this with chatbots. And there are lots of examples. There is this Zoom AI companion you can see here. There's like a chatbot now on Zoom that will tell you things. Jira has a kind of virtual agent assistant thing that's a chatbot in Jira that can tell you stuff about different tickets to file. Notion has a bunch of AI features, including a chatbot. Intercom, which is a customer support ticket system, has a chatbot. There are also like companies are building internal chatbots. PwC released ChatPwC, a very creative name. On April 16th, 2023, on the exact same day, McKinsey put out their chatbot called Lily, which is like, I don't know what it does. A couple weeks later, Walmart has one that's their own chatbot thing. A bunch of data companies also do the same thing. So Databricks, there's a chatbot on Databricks now. Tableau has one of these things too. This is a screen cap from a video, which is why it says it's focused on insights, but I don't know, Tableau's chatbot is focused on insights. Google Cloud has a chatbot, it's here. Atlan, which is a data catalog and like data discovery platform, has chatbots. Equals, which is like an Excel competitor now, has a chatbot. Like all of these things have chatbots. This is basically what we've done over the last couple of years. It's like, oh my God, chatbots, very popular. Let's put chatbots on stuff. A prediction, this is a screenshot from Interstellar where like Matthew McConaughey looks into the past and in the future from like a black hole and stuff. I don't know, stars things. Anyway, the prediction basically is like we're here. That for AI, this is basically the phase that we're in. That AI is probably going to be a big and like important thing, but the phase we are going through now is the like put a chatbot on it phase, not the actual place where we're delivering like really valuable products yet. That a lot of the things we're doing are things that are equivalent of Webvan, where yes, there is something good here, but it's probably not exactly the right implementation of what we're doing today. And so I think like the prediction is that we're going to start seeing a lot of these kind of early implementations of AI and chatbots and things like that not actually work out. And we've already seen that a little bit, where like Discord, which built a chatbot, kind of silently shut it down a few months ago. There's been a handful of these things where people have tried these experiments and are already starting to realize like, maybe it doesn't really work. And so I'm going to think we're going to see a lot more of this as people figure out like what to do with AI and how to make it work. So the last thing I want to talk about is like, all right, does that mean we're supposed to like kill the AI? Like Will Smith and iRobot, I think, killed the giant AI thing. Like, is that what we're supposed to do? No, probably not. But we just need to like figure out better ways to use it than just sticking chatbots on stuff. So I have like 4, I guess, vaguely movie-related things that are like how to make sure your AI doesn't kill you or fail you or whatever. I guess the AI killed him, but that's fine. Okay, so the 4 things. The first is, I don't know, these are like named after movie stuff. I don't know why I did this. We have the Kevin Costner principle. This one's like pretty predictable. Y'all can probably figure out what this one is going to be. Okay, so like put a chatbot on it. This might not work. Prior to this, there was put a website on it. There was actually kind of an intermediate version of this too, like in 2017, that was put a blockchain on it. We did a lot of this where we just like stuck blockchain things around stuff because it made our stocks go up, and that was cool. So here's an example of that. This was Maersk, I don't know how to say that, the big shipping conglomerate, and IBM built like a blockchain shipping solution. I don't know what it is. They put this out in 2018, thanks to the maritime executive. We know that a couple years ago they shut it down. They said like, hey, this thing doesn't actually work, doesn't make sense to put a blockchain on it. And the reason they shut it down was this, which was basically like they built a product and expected their customers to come. And so build a product that you know has customers ready. Don't build it because it's like a fancy new technology that will make your stock go up for a hot minute. That's what they did, didn't work out. They ended up shutting it down. Discord did not say why they shut this down, but it seems pretty clear it was not because it did crazy stuff like this. So a lot of the horror stories we hear about chatbots are these sorts of things where it's like, oh my God, it hallucinated something terrible, and like it makes for good kind of like gossipy content. But it probably wasn't this. The thing that probably happened with Discord was basically this, was they built a thing, it didn't really solve a problem. They built it because people thought we needed chatbots. It wasn't that useful, and like nobody wanted it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that where these chatbots are not that useful. They're things that we built because we wanted the technology, not because we wanted to solve the problem. And so we end up having to shut them down. So Kevin Costner principle, the obvious one, like if you build it, people may still not want it. Just because it's like a flashy technology. I think there's going to be a lot of these things again that don't really work out. All right, second principle, I don't know. The Doc Brown principle. Okay, so another application of AI is self-driving cars. This has been around for a while. We've like thought we're gonna have these things for a long time. They don't really seem to work great. And one of the reasons they don't work great is because this is a very hard problem to solve. That like having a self-driving car drive through all this traffic, like I can't figure out even what to do here. Like having a self-driving car navigate this is very difficult. It's very hard to like build an AI that can solve this problem. And so there is kind of an alternative approach potentially to having self-driving cars or having autonomous like transportation, which instead of thinking about how do we design a car for this road, it's thinking about how do we design roads to be better suited for self-driving cars. This is Minority Report, and like Tom Cruise is driving through these self-driving car things. And so like this is another way to think about how we build AI products is we can change the context of the problem. There are certain things that AI is very good at. There are certain things it's bad at. Trying to force it into the way that we solve problems today may be like trying to force self-driving cars through that intersection. Like it's going to be a painful and difficult process, and we're better off changing the context of the problem. And so the Doc Brown principle is like where we're going, we may not need the roads. That we can actually change the roads. We don't actually have to have all of the context that we have today, and if we do a good enough job of figuring that out, then we can solve the same problems in kind of different ways. And this is ultimately like what Instacart did that Webvan didn't, was Instacart figured out like, oh, we can kind of change the context of the problem where we don't need grocery stores. We don't need employees to be the people delivering everything. There's lots of different ways we can get groceries to you on time that aren't us building a grocery store. All right, third one, this is not a movie-related one. Third one is the Simone Biles principle. So one of the things that's like popular to try to do with AI is have it write SQL. There's a lot of companies that have like SQL writing chatbots. ChatGPT, or OpenAI has like a little widget library where you can say, here's example code for how to do things. They have one that is a natural language to SQL widget. This is the entirety of that widget. It is, 19 lines of code that basically is like, write a SQL query for this question. This does not work. It does not come close to working. It kind of sort of feels like it works, and for very basic examples, you'll be like, oh, that's tempting, that sort of works. Maybe that's a feature we can release. It's not good. Like this sort of thing is the kind of thing that it takes a ton more work to actually write a SQL bot that can write, or a chat bot that can write SQL, and largely we don't actually have any that are that great at it yet. And so in addition to Mode, I worked with a company called ThoughtSpot. ThoughtSpot is a company that is building this sort of thing. This is sort of the naive approach that was like what that ChatGPT example is, where it's like you have a question, you run it through GPT-3, it writes a SQL query, voila, you have an answer. ThoughtSpot has spent a long time trying to develop ways to do this better. That includes a lot of other systems that you have to solve to do that. There's a lot of like interaction between other models. There's a lot of context that you have to provide the system. This is like a very stylized diagram. But the idea here is like to go from simple question to SQL query. It is not feed it into ChatGPT. It's a whole lot of things that actually you have to build to be able to do that. You also have to be able to like constantly kind of monitor it. And there's like a fine tuning and sort of feedback mechanism here where you're going to find tons of weird edge cases. It's going to do funny things. You have to figure it out. Like the point here is this is a ton of work and it takes a really long time to get these things to work. You can build an early version really quickly with 19 lines of code from OpenAI's website, but actually building a functioning SQL chatbot is something that takes like years and years and years of work. And so Jeff Bezos has this line from one of his like shareholder letters about handstands, where he basically said that like, this is actually a quote from some handstand coach that he talked to. People think they should be able to master a handstand in 2 weeks. It feels like, oh, if I work on this for a little bit, like I'll be able to get good at this in a couple weeks. I'll spend 30 minutes a day on it or whatever, and then I'll be able to really get at it. In reality, it takes 6 months of practice. And there's like no shortcutting that. And most people will approach this thinking, I can do it in 2 weeks. They'll get frustrated and they'll quit. You've got to approach it knowing, no, this is a long thing. This is something that will take 6 months. And so for like AI stuff, as we're building these sorts of products, there is no shortcut to it. That a lot of these things will be tempting to build very quickly. The chatbots that people have built are often those things. It's like, let's get something out. It'll work really well. It works well 80% of the time, but that's a very, very frustrating product for folks to use. And so there is no shortcut to building the 95%, the 99% product. These things just take work, even though they seem initially like they work really well out of the box. Okay, so last thing I'll say is the Jason Derulo principle. So here is a map from Google Trends. Can anybody guess what this is based on the phenomena of 2 days ago? You may think it's the eclipse, and you would be sort of right. It's not actually the eclipse. It's my eyes hurt. So, like, don't stare at this. It might be cool to stare at this a little bit, like to think, because I can see the eclipse and all that. You can still see the sun. Don't stare at this. You can only look at the eclipse when it's like this, when it's fully covered. If you can see any of the sun, it's bad. The really stretched analogy here is like the best AI solutions are the ones where you don't see the AI. And if you start to have to like see the AI in it, they're often not actually solving real problems. So, for instance, EY, formerly Ernst & Young, has something called EY.ai. This is their website. I have no idea what this thing is. You can scroll through it and it like makes no sense what this actually is. But it's very much like, this is a platform for AI. The whole point is AI. They want to hit you in the face that the whole thing they're doing here is AI. What does it do beyond that? I have no idea. But it's AI. And oftentimes, like, that's the worst sort of product, is the product that tries to sell the technology and focuses on the fact that this is AI enabled, as opposed to just solving a problem and burying AI behind it. And so like, here is actually a very useful application of AI. This is the Google Magic Eraser, shout out Pixel users, where you can just like erase people from photos. This is AI, it is AI that makes this possible, but there's nothing really in this outside of like the magic part of the name that would make you know this is AI. They're not trying to sell you like, oh my God, use AI to solve a problem. They're just saying, hey, we have a really cool thing that you can like do stuff with. And if AI is in it, great. If AI is not in it, the user shouldn't care. And so in a lot of cases, like this is the way we should be thinking about AI is if you have to sell the fact that it is AI, you aren't solving the problem. You don't want to sell the AI. You should sell the thing you're solving. And if AI is the way you use it, great. Like if you're using Rails to build an application or using like JavaScript, like Node.js or whatever, no customer cares. They care about solving the problem. AI is no different. It's essentially just like a way to solve problems, and that should be pretty buried. So that's the Jason Derulo principle. This is a photo from 2 days ago. It's best when you don't see it. Don't stare straight at the AI. It's best if you fully cover it. That's when you like see the cool stuff.